It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of day where the sun sits heavy and the sidewalks buzz with people rushing somewhere important, or at least pretending to. Food trucks lined the curb. Skateboarders weaved between pedestrians. Street musicians filled corners with sound. Steven Seagal had just wrapped a private training session at a small martial arts studio tucked between a laundromat and a sandwich shop. He wore a plain dark jacket, his hair tied back, carrying nothing but a bottle of water. No entourage, no cameras, just a man taking the long way back to his car because he liked watching the city breathe. That's when he heard it. Not a crash, not a scream, just laughter. The wrong kind of laughter. The kind that has cruelty baked right into it. Across the street, near the entrance of a public park, a teenage boy sat on a bench with his backpack beside him. He looked maybe 15, 16 at most. Thin, quiet. The kind of kid who probably spent his lunch breaks reading or drawing, not causing trouble for anyone. But trouble had found him anyway. 3 older guys circled him. Late teens, maybe early 20s. Big, loud, wearing matching jackets like belonging to a group gave them permission to act however they wanted. One of them had snatched the boy's sketchbook and was flipping through it mockingly, holding pages up to his friends and laughing. The boy reached for it. They pulled it away. He reached again. They pushed his hand down. Steven stopped walking. He stood on the opposite side of the street, water bottle in hand, watching. His eyes moved slowly across the scene. Not with panic, not with rage, with something colder and more focused. Calculation. The boy on the bench wasn't fighting back. Not because he didn't want to. You could see it in the way his jaw tightened and his fists balled up on his knees. He wanted to stand up. But 3 against 1, and each of them outweighed him significantly. He was doing the math, and the math wasn't in his favor. People walked past the scene. A woman glanced over, then looked away. A jogger slowed slightly, then kept running. A man on his phone made direct eye contact with the boy and still turned the corner. The boy was invisible to everyone. Except Steven. He crossed the street without hurrying. Steady footsteps. Calm face. He held his water bottle at his side like he was simply heading toward the park to sit down. The 3 guys hadn't noticed him yet. They were too busy entertaining themselves. One of them had started drawing something childish in the sketchbook with a marker he'd pulled from his own pocket, scribbling over the boy's artwork. The boy's expression cracked. That sketchbook clearly meant something to him. Steven was now 10 feet away. One of the guys finally looked up and noticed the approaching figure. He squinted for a second, then nudged his friend and jutted his chin in Steven's direction like, "Look at this guy." Steven walked right into the middle of their circle and stopped directly beside the boy. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. He just looked at the one holding the sketchbook. "Give him his book back," Steven said. His voice was low and even. Not angry. Not nervous. The tone of someone who has already decided how this ends. The guy with the sketchbook looked Steven up and down and snorted. "You lost, old-timer? Keep it moving." Steven didn't move. "The book," he said again. 1 word shorter this time. The boy on the bench looked up at Steven with wide eyes, half grateful, half terrified. He whispered, "Sir, it's okay. You don't have to get involved." Steven glanced at him briefly. "How long have they been bothering you?" The boy hesitated. "About 20 minutes." Steven nodded once, like that was all he needed to hear. He turned back to the 3 guys. 20 minutes, he repeated quietly. "You've wasted 20 minutes of this kid's afternoon. Now you've used up about 30 seconds of mine. Give him his book back, and we're done here." The leader, the tallest one with the marker still in his hand, stepped forward. Up close, he was bigger than Steven had estimated. Broad shoulders, confident stance, the kind of guy who'd never had someone push back and mean it. "You have no idea who you're talking to," the leader said. Steven tilted his head slightly. "Neither do you." The guy blinked. Something about that answer didn't land the way insults usually do. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't a boast. It was simply a fact offered quietly, like someone correcting a small mistake on a form. The second guy laughed, trying to break the tension his leader suddenly couldn't carry. "Old man wants to be a hero. Somebody get this on video." Phones came out. But not just from the bullies. People nearby had started gathering. A couple of kids on bikes had stopped pedaling. A woman walking her dog paused at the park entrance. A teenager eating chips on a nearby bench sat up straighter. Within 60 seconds, a loose half-circle of onlookers had formed without anyone organizing it. People felt something different about this confrontation. They couldn't explain it yet, but they felt it. The boy tugged Stephen's sleeve gently. "Sir, please. The one on the left, he trains. He thinks he's some kind of fighter. They're going to hurt you." Stephen looked at the one on the left. Medium height, compact build, knuckles slightly calloused. He moved his weight to the balls of his feet the way trained people do without thinking about it. Stephen recognized the stance immediately. Some background. Probably a few years. Enough to be dangerous to someone with no training. Not nearly enough to matter right now. "What style?" Stephen asked the boy quietly, genuinely curious. The boy blinked, confused by the question. "I think he said black belt. Karate or something." Stephen nodded slowly like this was interesting weather information. The leader stepped even closer, trying to reclaim the moment. "You got one chance to walk away. You take it now. Nothing happens to you." He slapped the sketchbook against his palm twice for emphasis, the way people do when they want you to feel the weight of their words. Stephen looked at the sketchbook, then at the boy, then back at the leader. "Last time I'm asking," Stephen said. The leader laughed. Actually laughed. Loud and theatrical for the crowd. "Or what? You going to take it from me?" "No," Stephen said calmly. "I'll just wait for you to hand it over after this is done." Nobody quite understood what that meant. But the way he said it made several people in the growing crowd exchange glances. An older man near the back whispered to the person beside him. A woman pulled out her phone and started recording. Somewhere behind the crowd, a kid on a bicycle asked his friend, "Wait, is that Steven Seagal?" His friend squinted. "No way. Steven Seagal doesn't just walk around parks." But the idea spread. The leader had had enough. His pride had been publicly poked too many times in the last 2 minutes. He shoved Steven's chest with both hands. Steven didn't move. Not 1 inch. The guy's confidence flickered like a candle in wind. He shoved again. Harder. Using his full weight this time. Steven stood like a building. The crowd went completely quiet. Even traffic seemed to hold its breath. "How are you not moving?" the second guy muttered, mostly to himself. The boy on the bench slowly stood up, watching. The leader's face shifted. That easy arrogance dissolved, and something underneath it was exposed. Not toughness, just confusion and the first edges of fear. He turned to the one the boy had called a black belt. "Marcus," he said. One word, like a question and an order at the same time. Marcus stepped forward. And now his whole energy was different from the others. He rolled his neck once, set his feet, raised his hands in a clean fighting stance. Controlled breathing. He had done this before in a gym 100 times. He believed he could do it here too. "You really want this?" Marcus asked Stephen. "I want the sketchbook," Stephen replied. Marcus lunged forward with a fast front kick aimed at Stephen's midsection. It was technically decent. Clean chamber, decent extension. In a gym, it would have looked impressive. Stephen moved to the side with what looked like almost no effort. Like he simply wasn't where the kick was going anymore. Marcus stumbled slightly from the missed contact, readjusted, and threw a sharp combination, 2 punches followed by a spinning back kick. Stephen wasn't there for any of it. He moved the way water moves around a stone in a river. Smooth, effortless, without resistance. Not running. Not panicking. Just not being where the strikes were. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Someone gasped. A kid on the bike dropped his mouth open. The woman recording said quietly to herself, "He's not even trying." Marcus was breathing harder now, frustration chipping away at his technique. He threw a wild haymaker, all power, no precision. Stephen caught his wrist mid-swing, stepped in close, and applied a joint lock so efficiently that Marcus bent forward immediately with a sharp cry. Not broken, not damaged, just completely neutralized in under 2 seconds. Stephen held the position for 1 moment, so the crowd could register what had just happened. Then he released it and stepped back. Marcus grabbed his wrist and stared at his own hand like it had betrayed him. "Your chamber drops before you kick," Stephen said, without any mockery in his voice. That's how I knew it was coming every time. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. He had spent years training, and this man had just picked him apart while barely shifting his feet. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was quiet and absolute. The worst kind. The second guy took one step forward, then stopped. Whatever he was about to do, he decided against it. Loudly decided against it. He actually held both hands up and stepped back, which made several people in the crowd laugh. The leader stood there, sketchbook still in his hand. The swagger was completely gone now. He looked suddenly young. Much younger than he'd seemed 2 minutes ago. Like the act he'd been performing finally ran out of script. Stephen walked toward him. Not fast. Not slow. The leader didn't move. Maybe he was frozen. Maybe some part of him understood that moving was pointless. Stephen stopped directly in front of him. Reached out. Took the sketchbook from his hand without resistance. Turned and walked back to the boy. He held it out. The boy took it with both hands, clutching it to his chest like it was the most important thing he owned. Maybe it was. "Thank you," the boy said. His voice was thick. He was trying very hard not to cry in front of everyone. "I didn't think anyone was going to help." Stephen looked at him steadily. Someone always should. The crowd broke into applause. Real applause, not polite clapping, the kind that comes from somewhere genuine in people's chests. The three bullies backed away from the scene slowly, trying to disappear without running, but failing at the dignity of it. People let them go. The point had already been made louder than anything else could have made it. Someone shouted from the crowd, "That's Steven Seagal." And now it landed, because now they had watched what he could do with their own eyes. The recognition rippled through the gathered crowd like electricity. People pressed forward slightly, not to cause trouble, just pulled by that magnetic human instinct when something remarkable has just happened right in front of you, and you want to be close to it. But Stephen had already turned back to the boy. "What's your name?" he asked. "Daniel," the boy said. "Those your drawings?" Stephen nodded at the sketchbook. Daniel looked down at it. "Yes, sir. I draw every day. It's kind of the only thing I'm really good at." Stephen raised an eyebrow slightly. "Don't say that like an apology." Daniel blinked. "Being good at something most people can't do is worth protecting," Stephen said. "Don't let anyone make you feel small for it." Daniel opened the sketchbook carefully and looked at the pages the bully had scribbled on. His face fell a little. Some of the drawings underneath were smeared now, lines crossed out with thick black marker. Weeks of work partially ruined. Stephen looked at the damaged pages. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The ones they damaged. Draw them again. Better. Because now you'll remember exactly why they matter." That hit the crowd harder than any of the fighting had. A few people nearby actually fell silent in a different way, the way people go quiet when something true gets said out loud in public. Daniel looked up at Stephen. He was definitely crying now, just a little, just enough. He nodded. An older man in the crowd stepped forward, a retired teacher by the look of him, and started clapping again. Within 2 seconds, the whole crowd joined. Louder this time. The kind of applause that says we were all watching and we all feel the same thing right now. Stephen didn't bow or smile for the crowd. He just gave Daniel a small nod like finishing a sentence and stepped back. By the time Daniel made it home that afternoon, 3 different people from the crowd had already posted the video online. The clearest one, recorded by the woman with the dog, showed everything from Stephen's first approach to the moment he handed the sketchbook back. The comments started before the video had even finished uploading. 2 hours later, the video had crossed 800,000 views. 5 hours later, it was past 4 million and climbing. Daniel had no idea. He was sitting at his desk redrawing one of the ruined pages, headphones in, focused the way he always was when he drew. His phone buzzed once. Then again. Then it didn't stop. His older sister walked in holding her phone with an expression like she'd just won something. "Daniel," she said slowly, "you're on the internet." He took her phone. Watched the video. Watched himself, terrified on a bench. Watched Stephen cross the street. Watched Marcus go flying into nothing and come back with a sore wrist. Watched himself clutching the sketchbook to his chest. Watched the crowd applaud. He read the comments with shaking hands. This kid's courage is incredible. He didn't run. He stayed calm. Steven Seagal showing up like that. This is a movie. Someone protect this boy and his art forever. The way that so-called black belt got handled in about 4 seconds. "I'm done." That last thing Stephen said about redrawing the damaged pages better. I felt that in my bones. Daniel put the phone down on his desk, sat there for a minute. Then he picked up his pencil and kept drawing. The next morning, the story had reached news outlets. Not just entertainment pages, but actual news. The angle wasn't just Steven Seagal. It was the drawing. Someone had found Daniel's social media page, barely 60 followers, mostly family, and screenshot some of his artwork. It was genuinely good. The kind of work that stops you mid-scroll. Detailed street scenes. Portraits with real emotion in the eyes. City rooftops at golden hour drawn in pencil with the kind of patience most adults had given up on by his age. The internet adopted him immediately. An art supply company sent a full professional kit to his home within 48 hours. An online art school offered him a full scholarship. A gallery in New York reached out to his family asking if Daniel would be interested in a small feature in their upcoming Young Artist Showcase. His follower count went from 60 to over 200,000 in 3 days. Daniel did interviews sitting in his bedroom, sketchbook in hand, not quite knowing where to look at the camera. He was still the same quiet kid from the bench. But something had shifted in how he held himself. His shoulders weren't tucked in the same way. He looked at the camera instead of around it. In one interview, a reporter asked him, "What was going through your mind when that man stepped in to help you?" Daniel thought about it for a second. "I thought he was going to get hurt," he said honestly, "because I didn't know who he was. I just thought he was some regular guy who didn't understand what he was walking into." The reporter smiled. "And when you figured out who he was?" Daniel laughed a little. "I felt bad for Marcus." The clip went viral separately. Marcus, for what it's worth, quietly deleted his social media accounts within 24 hours of the video going up. The leader of the group issued a public apology through a statement that most people agreed was written by someone older than him. The third guy, the one who'd held his hands up and backed away immediately, somehow avoided most of the criticism online. The comment sections were oddly generous about him. "At least he had the sense to stop," someone wrote, and thousands of people agreed. The real moment that closed the chapter happened 6 days after the park incident. Daniel received a message on his now very active social media account. No blue check mark. Plain profile photo. 3 words in the message before a phone number. "Call me. Steven." Daniel stared at his phone for 4 full minutes before calling. Steven answered on the second ring. "I saw your drawings," he said. "No greeting, just straight to the point. The ones online. They're good. Not internet good. Actually good." Daniel didn't know what to say. He said thank you. "There's a community center near you," Steven said. "They run an evening art program. I spoke to the director. They want to display 3 of your pieces in the lobby for their annual showcase next month. Proper framing. Proper lighting. Your name on the wall." Daniel sat down on his bed. He pressed his free hand flat against the mattress to make sure the room was still solid. "You don't have to decide now," Steven said. "But I think you should do it." "Why are you doing all this?" Daniel asked quietly. Steven was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because talent doesn't care about whether you're being bullied on a park bench or standing in a gallery. It just needs someone to stop looking the other way." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Yes," he said. "I'll do it." "Good." A brief pause. "And Daniel?" "Yes, sir. Next time someone bothers you, walk away if you can. But if you can't walk away, stand up straight." Bullies read posture before they read anything else. You give them nothing to read. Daniel nodded, even though no one could see him. "Yes, sir." "Go draw something," Steven said. And the call ended. The showcase happened on a Thursday evening, 1 month later. 3 of Daniel's drawings hung in the community center lobby in proper frames with proper lighting and a small card beside each one with his name and age. His family came. His school art teacher came. Several people who had seen the video and reached out over the weeks came. Strangers who had become something like supporters. Steven wasn't there in person. He sent a note. It was short. To Daniel. "The drawings are the point. Everything else is just noise. Keep making them." Daniel kept the note in his sketchbook. Right on the inside cover, folded once. The sketchbook. The same one the bullies had grabbed. The same one with the damaged pages he had redrawn. Better. Just like he'd been told. That night, after everyone went home and the lights in the community center were dimmed, but not yet off, Daniel stood alone for a minute in front of his 3 framed pieces. He looked at them the way artists look at their own work, which is never quite satisfied, always seeing the next version, the better version, the truer version. But for 1 minute, he let himself just look. He thought about the bench, the laughter, the marker on his pages, the moment he thought nobody was going to come, and the sound of steady footsteps crossing the street. He thought about how one person deciding not to walk past changed every single thing that followed. Not just for that afternoon, for the drawings on the wall, for his name on the card, for the phone call, for this moment. He picked up his pencil on the way out. He already knew what he was going to draw next.